Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Seminole campus of St. Pete College. I'm Mark Strickland, the provost of this wonderful facility. I see our students looking sharp, getting ready to go for our second annual grand debate. Before we get started, it's important to recognize several of our distinguished guests here this evening. And if I missed somebody, my apologies. We have Mayor Waters in the back. You go ahead and give your Waters wave, Mayor Waters. We have Dennis Ross joining us this evening. Commissioner Janet Long, and Councilman Jim Oliver, who once held this podium, as well as the former provost at St. Pete College, Jim Oliver. And of course, our ISPS board members that are here with us this evening. We want to give a shout out to them, plus our faculty and staff that have put this event together. It's a labor of love, plus our guys in the booth running the technology, and this is obviously being streamed worldwide. So we thank everybody for their efforts in joining us. Now I understand we have 5 schools representing us this evening. Eastern Florida State College, where you at? There you are. Hillsborough Community College. We have Polk State in the house. Miami-Dade. And of course, St. Petersburg College. So with that, I'd like to introduce our Executive Director of our ISPS, Ms. Kimberly Jackson. Thank you so much.
Good evening. I'm going to be brief because I know not to talk long in between either of my former boss and my current boss. My name is Kimberly Jackson. I'm the Executive Director. I just want to say briefly, I'm so honored to have you all face to face here, that 5 colleges came and took your time. You all have prepped so hard. Our faculty that have worked off their tushes to help make sure that these students know what they needed to do to prepare for this debate. It is a labor of love and it's beautiful. And thank you so much to our judges who take your time to come out to do this wonderful work. On top of it, I'd like to thank our lead sponsor, Liz Simbler, who is also a board member of the Simbler Company, and Sony of the Cambria Hotel. If you haven't been there, she's been amazing in supporting our staff. The top winner is also going to receive an overnight stay at the hotel. I want to thank Ginger and Eric with the Florida Association of Counties for bringing over a delegation of county commissioners and staff over from Tampa to attend tonight's debate and watch our future leaders. And thank you all for taking some time. You know, Congressman Young, it's been a pleasure to walk in this space and meet so many of the people who cared about him and cared about the footprint of the community, who cared enough about keeping civic discourse and having an appropriate place for these programs to exist. And I want to personally thank our exquisite judges for taking time to do that with us today. Thank you. And with that, we're going to kick things off because it's about the students. Students, you all are going to have to go pretty quickly. I have the honor of introducing my mentor, my boss, my former law professor. I'm Susan Demers, who is a 1971 graduate of Stetson University College of Law, Stetson University, and bachelor's degree in speech and theater, and a Juris Doctorate from the University of Florida College of Law. Forgive my faux pas, I love Stetson. I know you love Florida College. Since 1982, she has served as the Dean of the St. Petersburg College's ABA-approved Paralegal Studies program and taught a variety of law-related courses. She is currently the Dean of College of Policy, Public Safety and Ethics, and Legal Studies at SPC. We call her the Dean of Law and Order. I don't know if she knows that. And one of the most important endeavors in the Civic Engagement Project designed to develop more informed citizens. She also oversees the 4-year program in public policy and administration. But more importantly, she cares. I believe this is her 7th year of moderating this, and has been completely supportive in teaching and prepping and making sure that students thrive at SPC, but also around our community. And with that, thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Kim. So I am not off the leash tonight. I have a script that I am supposed to follow, so I'm going to do that. I want to welcome all of you to the final competition of the Grand Debate, and it really is an honor to be part of a tradition that goes back 13 years here, some years before that, 13 continuous years, and obviously millennia in the world. This is a grand tradition, and I'm happy to say that it's not only following a tradition, but there are very specific educational outcomes as a result of this. So it fulfills the college experience goal by promoting friendly college rivalries. It provides great out-of-classroom experiences for both audience members and our brave competitors. It helps competitors hone research, writing, and presentation skills, which is really a way of preparing for a job interview or all of life. It promotes critical thinking, research, and public speaking. It advances understanding of important public issues. So we tackled a variety of topics across these schools this year: death penalty, affordable free community college, germline and embryonic genetic engineering, school choice. That's just this year's topics. These are controversial, timely issues about which our students are becoming well informed. Not only those doing the debating, but their audiences back home, their family members who had to listen to them prepare, right? We're proud of all of them for undertaking a really challenging task. I want to thank all of you students, the faculty, staff, family members, and friends of the debaters for turning out, for your support. And I also want to recognize our timekeepers, facilitators, coaches, and judges who volunteered to help present in this event. So I'll start down here. Provost Strickland is going to serve as the scorekeeper. Our timekeeper is Assistant Dean Douglas Rivero. Our referee is Professor Michael Culligan. And I want to introduce our judges. Commissioner Janet Long of Pinellas County, former Congressman Dennis Ross, and Dr. Allison Heil, who is the Dean of Workforce at Pasco Hernando State College and serves on the ISPS board. And you'll note that different areas of the state are represented on our judicial panel. Now, I was told that I could not freeform the rules, so I'm going to be very exact and read them in a dramatic reading. All of the student debaters were assigned the same topic, which is voter ID is necessary to protect voter integrity. They were randomly assigned to debate opponent, to speaking order, and to the position that they will argue. I want to emphasize that the students are not advocating their own personal positions. It's simply assigned for purpose of debate. This is ultimately an academic exercise. Each debater will have 2 minutes in which to make the case for her or his assigned position. Each then will have 1 minute to make a rebuttal of the opponent's points or to wrap up his or her own argument. And then the debate ends. There's to be no interrupting of speakers while making a presentation. So let me just go through that again. So there's the position. There is 2 minutes to agree, 2 minutes to disagree, 1 minute first rebuttal, 1 minute first rebuttal, 1 minute second rebuttal, 1 minute second rebuttal. Does that make sense to everybody? So it's an 8-minute round. Judges will rate the debaters using a scoring system 1 to 100, which is sort of 1 on the poor end, excellent on the 100 end, and they evaluate the following 6 metrics. First of all, the opening argument. Did the student make his or her position and the reasons for it clear? Comprehension of relevant factors. Did the student understand what factors were relevant to the issue? Rebuttals. Did the student fully address the opponent's arguments? Quality of evidence. Did the student orally cite credible sources to support their argument? Presentation skills. Did the student present him or herself professionally? Students were advised that direct or script reading will result in deduction of points. Consistency. Did the student maintain his or her position throughout the argument? So Kyle, at this point, if you would show the rules. So this is the framework in which the students worked. One note card. Judges use our score sheet. Mr. Culligan is in charge of refereeing any questions. Students don't get interrupted during the argument. This is the whole idea, is to allow people civil discourse, have their say. And finally, Professor Rivero is going to hold up time cards, and that's how our competitors will know how much time is left. So I hope that makes it clear to everybody, and here we go. I want to introduce our first set of competitors. So please welcome Joshua Blow of Eastern Florida State College and Jasmine Montesano of SPC. Again, the issue is voter ID is necessary to protect voter integrity. Agree or disagree? Taking the agree side is Joshua Blow. Taking the disagree side is Jasmine Montesano. Going first will be Joshua. 2 minutes for your argument.
All right, thank you so much. Quote, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility, end quote. This is a quote from the preamble of our nation's own constitution, and in it outlines two very key things that the government needs to do in order to uphold the principles of the government. It says that we need to establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility, and we're looking inside the confines of voter ID and voter registration. We can see that by requiring voter ID, that is how the government upholds these two key tenets of the system. First, it establishes justice. The government's main duty is to protect from fraud. And for the government to ignore fraud in any sense constitutes an utter failure of the government's responsibilities to its citizens and to its own laws, to its constitution. So we need to make sure that the government upholds its own duty in making sure that we always have protection from fraud and protections from other things. Second of all, it needs to ensure domestic tranquility. We need to look at what the public deserves, what citizens deserve, and citizens deserve in elections they can trust. They need to trust their elections. In fact, according to the New York Times, about 37% of Americans do not trust the elections, the things that constitutes their freedom in America, the things that allows them to participate in democracy. They do not trust them. But we can make sure that they have the ability to trust in their government by protecting them, by making sure that peoples who are out to make sure that they do not cast the wrong vote or that the election swings in their favor in dishonest manners are not giving a platform in order to go through their unimaginable deeds. So the government has these two key duties: to establish justice and to ensure domestic tranquility. And it does this by requiring voter ID when registering to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. Jasmine, 2 minutes.
Imagine yourself a citizen of America ready to vote, and yet when you're ready to vote, you are denied. Why? Because now voter ID is a necessity. And majority of Americans, 21 million Americans, do not have an ID, nor can they afford it. That means we are discriminating 21 million Americans for not being able to vote, which is a special freedom that we possess in America. The real reason for voter ID is voter suppression. The main impact is promoting voter suppression, and this is not new in our history. Jim Crow era had literary tests, poll taxes, extra legal measures for African Americans, and in 1965 that was outlawed. But implanting a voter ID would do the same thing, since 18% of people over 65 do not have IDs, 16% of Latinos, 25% of African Americans, 15% of low income, and people who change their last name due to marriage or those who get divorced will have to pay to get the proper voting ID. Same with students. They cannot use their voter ID for their ID. They have to get a specific ID for that. That would only discriminate people if we had voter ID. This was from the leagueofwomanvoters.org. And also, travel is not accessible for everybody, especially those who are elderly or those who have special needs. And money is an issue. If you do not have an ID, you have to spend, you have to get a birth certificate or other documents, which could lead up to $200. This information is found at www.breezecenter.org. Voter ID is not necessary to protect voter integrity. Why go through the endless process of money, time, and energy when in the long run it will take a sliver of freedom away and only protect voter integrity of those who can vote? Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. Joshua, 1 minute, first rebuttal.
All right, thank you. That was a good speech. However, my opponent is ignoring one thing about voter IDs. You see, how much does it cost to buy a government-issued ID that is required to register for vote? $25. This $25 is not going to put anyone into a debilitating statement of debt. It is not going to ruin someone's life. It is $25. And so it is not impossible for someone to get an ID to allow them to vote. But we can see that the true purpose is not to marginalize a group of people, it is to ensure established justice, to protect from frauds in all cases in all systems of the government. That is inherently the government's duty. But it's also to make sure that these voters have peace of mind, that they know that their vote matters, because someone else is not going to use unscrupulous methods in order to make the election swing in their favor. So because the government has this inherent duty to protect fraud, to ensure domestic tranquility. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. First rebuttal, Jasmine, 1 minute.
$25 is actually a lot of money. People are paycheck to paycheck, and voter ID on top of if they need a birth certificate or other legal documents can add up just to vote. And I know that you brought up fraud, but fraud is a very small percentage chance due to the reason that is a blocky way to get an election, and most people don't want to spend time and energy and even getting funded for that just to have a specific person in power. Thank you.
Joshua?
Right. Thank you so much. So we can see that the government still has this inherent duty. It does not matter how great or small the fraud is. It matters that it's a threat to our nation's justice. And the government has an inherent duty to uphold justice for its citizens and within its elections. What else do voter IDs do? Well, it makes sure that people can trust their elections, which is something my opponent did not respond to. It ensures that people can have an elections they can trust in because they know that people are not using fraud and other evil and heinous methods to make the elections swing in their favor. The government has this duty. And at the end, we can see that we require IDs for many different things. We require them to go driving. We require them to open a business. We require them for so much. But for something as important as democracy, something as important as voting in elections, we should require them all the more. Because this is a key tenet of our very nation's principles. So because the government has this inherent duty, I strongly stand on the affirmative side. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. Jasmine?
Justice. Yes, we all know what justice is, and what justice needs to be is that everybody in America can vote. Voter ID, as I mentioned, is very expensive, and as the Constitution, the Founding Fathers want every single America to vote, and that is why that we stopped in 1965 the Jim Crow era, because it was discriminating. Again, money is tough, times are tough. And the importance of promoting justice and the importance of having everybody to vote is key to make sure we live in unity and to be able to have a say in our government, because it's people over government, not government over people. I want to say a quick story right now about an 84-year-old woman who was denied the right to vote due to a state who had a voter ID. She has the wrong birth certificate, as a lot of seniors do at that time, and she doesn't have a license, and she cannot afford it. And so there are many, many other people who are struggling with this, and we just cannot do that. Thank you.
Thank you both. And that's how a round goes. 8 minutes, just like that. While the judges complete their scoring sheets, let's go ahead and call in the second pair of debaters. And while they're bringing in the next pair of debaters, let me just take a point of principle here and speak to one thing. I want to thank all the faculty and staff who helped make this event happen, most particularly coaches. From Eastern Florida State College, Josh Humphreys and Christy McBride. From Hillsborough Community College, Andrea Vincenti, Anne-Marie Coates, Kara Williamson, and Jana Bielecki. From St. Petersburg College, Douglas Rivero, Eric Tucker, Katie Snell, Michael Cullivan, and Bladar Prifty. From Polk State College, Christina Jesmundo. From Miami-Dade College, William Murphy. Now, we wanted to show you in this little interim, as we're moving people in, just a little bit about the different campuses participating today so our students in our audience can get a small tour of the Florida college system, see where these folks come from. First up, Eastern Florida State College and Miami-Dade College. We probably had the furthest to travel here. So let's go ahead, Kyle.
Your future begins with a choice, a first step in the right direction. Eastern Florida State College can help get you there. Create a great career with a bachelor's degree, an associate's degree, or a college certificate in high-demand job fields like healthcare, advanced manufacturing, aerospace technology, computer technology, and more. On campus or online, you can find inspiration, support, and success. So, what are you waiting for? Take that first step. Eastern Florida State College, where Titans rise.
Level up, earn more, dream big. Greater earning power and career success are yours at Miami-Dade College. MDC graduates pay less to earn a degree, get employed after graduation, and make more per year than other grads. Choose from hundreds of affordable high-tech and in-demand career programs, including cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, business, and nursing. Learn and earn today at Miami-Dade College. Enroll now at mdc.edu/enroll.
All righty. So, we're going to meet our second set of debaters. I want you to welcome Diamond Jamal of SPC and Liliana Barros Lopez of Miami-Dade. Welcome. Now, again, the issue is voter ID is necessary to protect voter integrity. Agree and disagree. The agree side is Diamond Jamal. Am I correct? Yes, all right. The disagree side is Liliana Barros Lopez. Correct? All right. Going first will be Ms. Jamal. You have 2 minutes to make your argument, and the timekeeper will hold up flashcards to let you know that you have 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and then stop. All right? And let's go.
Oh, do we start now? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I agree with the notion that voter IDs are necessary to protect voter integrity, being that they are easy to obtain and that they help reduce voter fraud. According to the National Conference of State Legislators, increasing identification requirements can prevent in-person voter impersonation and increase public confidence in the election process. This is the reason that 36 out of 50 states have laws that require voters or request that they bring their voter ID to the polls. Some believe that these laws make it harder for people to be able to vote, but this is not the case. In the 2008 Supreme Court case of Crawford versus Merriam County Election Board, the court held that an Indiana law requiring voters to provide photographic identification did not violate the Constitution. States cannot constitutionally employ any voter laws that make it harder for people to be able to vote, which is why there are many ways in which you can go about obtaining a voter ID. As stated by registertovoteflorida.gov, you can visit your local DMV, tax collector's office, mail or submit your application in person at your local supervisor's election of office, etc. Now, a stereotype that needs to be addressed is that voter IDs disproportionately affect the majority of the population because they lack the proper documents that they need in order to obtain one. However, this has been disproven by the research study done in 2015 by Project Vote, which showed that 91% of the US population have proper identification documents. Critics of voter IDs also state that it will reduce voter turnout. However, according to NPR, only 4 out of the 10 eligible voters vote. With a growing population of young eligible voters not wanting to vote, citing different reasons such as not being politically engaged, not liking the current candidates, or feeling like their vote doesn't matter either way. So to suggest that a card alone contributes to low voter turnout would simply be false. The goal of having a voter ID is to protect your integrity as a voter, which is exactly what the voter ID does. Thank you.
All right. Liliana, you have 2 minutes to argue the opposite point of view.
Crystal Watson, a college student, tried to vote after her shift after working as a deputy registrar during the 2020 election. She was denied because she carried an ID that was about to be expired in 10 days. Voter integrity is making sure that everyone who is eligible to vote has the opportunity to do so. The number one obligation of a democracy is to ensure that every citizen in the country has the opportunity to vote. If one person is not able to vote, then we are not doing our job as a country. According to a study from the University of Pennsylvania, the minority voters were turned down to vote 2.5 to 6 times more than white voters in the state of Michigan. This would mean that voter integrity is lost because thousands of people would be disenfranchised. This can cause the amount of voters to decrease, thus causing voter integrity to be ruined in the United States. Second, voter ID won't solve fraud. One of the most common ways people have committed fraud through voting is duplicate voting. According to the National Congress of Legislators in 2022, since the US has a very mobile population, voters can often be on 2 different voting rolls in 2 different states. Unless states have proper communication, then these voters go unnoticed, and states control the election, so it's up to them to ensure the votes are counted correctly and that the states communicate with each other. Requiring all states to have voters show ID won't stop fraud, but will disenfranchise thousands of voters. This is what ruins voter integrity and ruins this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Liliana. Diamond, 1 minute, first rebuttal.
So my opponent stated that minority voters were turned down, and I just want to ask my opponent, when was this source conducted and what specific minority was turned down and what percentage? Because it's a common misconception that minorities aren't able to have voter IDs because they lack the proper documentation. However, it was disproven that majority of minorities do have proper identification in order to obtain a voter ID. As I stated earlier, from the 2015 research paper, it was showed that Black people consist of 87%, 90% of Hispanics, and 89% of other racial minorities had proper identification. And also my opponent stated that voter IDs don't help reduce fraud. However, I would like my opponent to also go into detail about what specific fraud that you're referring to, because voter ID helps reduce in-person voter fraud. Yes, there are other different forms of fraud that we can look at using different things to solve for that, but as far as in-person, voter IDs do help. Thank you.
Thank you. You have 1 minute. First rebuttal, sorry.
Okay, so my opponent is saying that this helps reduce voter fraud and that 36 out of 50 have laws when it comes to using the ID in person. But what about the people who travel to a different state and keep their ID, or they own property in 2 different states and they're allowed to vote in both and nobody notices? That's a huge issue that goes on, and that's part of a lot of voter fraud that's happening now today. Also, to answer her question of why minorities may not have IDs, The ACLU stated that the combined cost of document fees, travel expenses, and waiting times are estimated to range from $75 to $175. Some people don't have that kind of money. And nearly 500,000 people don't have cars in order to drive to the nearest DMV, especially considering that America is mostly rural.
Thank you, Liliana. All right, Diamond, your second rebuttal, 1 minute.
So my opponent stated that what happens when someone has a voter ID and travels to another state or votes twice or another state. I'm not sure if I heard that correctly. However, it is explicitly stated that if you move to a new area, you are supposed to update or let your election office know that you're in a new area. You can't just vote with the same card in a different state. And also, my opponent said that it would affect people who wouldn't be able to afford it. However, you don't have to pay for a voter ID. You can register for free. You just have to have different forms of identification to prove that you are who you are. And there are also different ways in which you can do that, because my opponent stated that what if you don't have a car to be able to drive to get your voter's ID? Well, you can register online, and if you don't have access to internet, you don't have to do it online either. You can do mail-in, you can go in person. There are so many different ways in which you can get your voter ID. And a question I'd like to ask my opponent is, what is wrong with having another step of identification to ensure that voter fraud does not occur in person? Thank you.
Thank you, and Liliana, you get the final rebuttal, 1 minute.
So she says that the citizens are supposed to update their state, stating which state they actually live in, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people use both IDs, or they use the ID that they had from the state thinking that it's okay and it'll just expire. So it's happened multiple times. Not just talking about voter ID. So we're not just talking about voter IDs, like a certain voter identification card. We're also talking about state and government licenses. And those are offered at DMVs, and DMVs are only, in rural areas, DMVs can be up to 10 miles away from somebody's home. And if you don't have a car and there's no public transportation in a rural area, because there isn't a lot of transportation in rural areas, then how would we be able to get to and from the DMV? She also stated that this protects integrity, but voter integrity means.
Thank you. Thank you both. All right, nice round. And while the judges complete their scoring sheets, let's go ahead and call in the third set of debaters. And I think, Kyle, if you'll cue up, we've got a couple of other videos. Let me just mention that this is the 10th year that the Institute for Strategic Policy Solutions has sponsored this particular debate. This is the second year that we've had colleges from around the state participating in the debate. And as we talked about earlier, the topics all over the state were all challenging topics, and we're really pleased with the level of research, but also camaraderie that comes in this particular kind of a competition. Let's look, I guess we have the HCC campus tour. Am I correct? Let's see.
Inspired students, engaging instructors, innovative partnerships, relevant programs for today's knowledge-based economy. These are a few of the factors that contribute to the stimulating learning environment that is Hillsborough Community College. Building on more than 5 decades of service to the Tampa Bay region, HCC serves more than 42,000 students each year at our 5 campuses, 3 centers, and through our wide array of online courses. From programs that improve the healthcare of our community, to those that support the growing regional transportation and logistics industry, to the arts that elevate the quality of life for our citizens, HCC ensures that higher education is within reach of anyone with the motivation to accomplish it. HCC offers over 200 academic options in a variety of formats to meet the evolving needs of today's student. At the core of our offerings, the Associate in Arts degree provides structured, articulated pathways to meet the freshman and sophomore general education requirements for those wanting to transfer to a 4-year college or university. Designed in partnership with business and industry, HCC's more than 170 workforce programs provide students with the advanced skill sets needed to enter the job market immediately. These programs include associate in science degrees, college credit certificates, post-secondary adult vocational certificates, advanced technical certificates, applied technology diplomas, customized corporate training solutions, and our first baccalaureate degree, the Bachelor of Science in Nursing. HCC also offers dual enrollment and collegiate academies for highly motivated high school students in collaboration with the School District of Hillsborough County. The strength of these partnerships makes HCC the first choice for recent high school graduates moving into higher education and has helped us maintain our position as the largest feeder institution to USF. Promoting on-campus engagement through a well-rounded student learning experience is something the college believes is essential to student success. HCC provides countless opportunities for students looking to connect with others who have similar interests through our student clubs, cultural events, and art programs. And of course, Hawk Pride is always on display as we cheer on our highly competitive athletic teams. HCC graduates go on to have an enormous impact on our community and economy. One of the most distinguishing features of our alumni is that more than 84% stay in the local area. And with their skills gained at HCC, they contribute significantly to the economic vitality of Tampa Bay. Combined with the college's annual budget of over $290 million and our more than 2,200 employees, HCC has an annual economic impact of over $1.3 billion. With a foundation centered on student success, HCC will continue to meet the needs of Tampa Bay for decades to come by developing the full potential of our students as productive, contributing citizens. We are building our community one student at a time. Hillsborough Community College. Our community, your college.
All right. I want to meet our third set of debaters. In this case, it's Leah Kohler. Is that right?
Kaler.
Kaler. Leah Kaler of Polk and Simeon Sanders from HCC. Let me remind you, after that video, the issue is voter ID is necessary to protect voter integrity. The agree side is Leah. The disagree side is Simeon. Going first will be Leah, and you have 2 minutes to present your main argument. All right? Starting now.
Distinguished guests, esteemed judges, and fellow debaters, our democracy has a credibility issue, especially concerning elections. Voter ID is absolutely necessary to protect the integrity of our elections. In the past few elections here in the US, there have been several issues and even lawsuits related to voter fraud. According to one memo on voters and elections issued in March of 2021 by the Honest Elections Project, there have been accusations of voter impersonation, non-citizen voting, out-of-state voting, and voting multiple times, all in the past few elections. In June of 2023, Monmouth University published a poll finding that 3 of 10 Americans believe the 2020 election was only won by Joe Biden due to widespread election fraud. Whether or not widespread voter fraud was actually committed, this poll reveals the sheer amount of distrust Americans have in the democratic process. One way of assuaging the fears of those who believe in this widespread voter fraud is to require a photo ID at polling places. U.S. citizens deserve to rest easy and have confidence in the results of their elections. When the validity of lawmakers and electors relies upon a fair and honest election, we must do everything we can to protect that process. The most simple way to protect the integrity of American elections is to establish national voter ID laws. Current voter ID laws have diverse and bipartisan support. After all, who wants a fraudulent election? Additionally, carrying an ID is something that almost all of us do. According to the National Conference of State Legislatures websites, most states accept voter IDs, including driver's licenses, non-driver IDs, U.S. passports, military IDs, and some states even issue IDs specifically for voting. If you drive a car, travel internationally, or buy age-restricted goods, an ID is required. It really isn't a heavy burden to carry an ID to your local polling place and make sure that your vote counts.
Thank you. Now, Simeon, you have 2 minutes to argue the opposing point of view. Starting now.
Today's debate is about fair and equal access. I'll say that again, fair and equal access. Voter ID is not beneficial to our democratic process. It's not necessary for voter integrity. and it actually has been proven to disenfranchise and disadvantage minority members of our voting communities. Now, proponents of voter ID, such as my opposition, Ms. Kohler, will say that voter ID is necessary in order to prevent voter fraud. This is a red herring. In 2014, Washington Post study showed that from 2000 to 2014, over the course of 4 different elections, with over 1 billion ballots cast, only 31 credible claims of voter fraud were brought up. Only 31 in 1 billion. The democratic principles that our country is founded on should provide equality to all, equality of opportunity and access, especially to vote. Voter integrity is to uphold democracy. With voter ID, we give the illusion of democracy, yet fail to provide it. In 1870, when the 15th Amendment passed, black men were supposed to be able to vote. Yet poll taxes, literacy tests, grandfather clauses, all of these things were to deter them from voting. They can vote, we said, but in reality, the policy didn't uphold that. We can't do that again. From this, we can learn that voter integrity isn't just about who we say can vote, but what policy we enact to ensure that everyone has equal access to vote. Voting is a fundamental civil right, and voter ID destroys voter integrity by largely discriminating against our country's minorities, the elderly, low-income, and voters of color. It's a barrier to voter integrity, and any and all barriers to our fundamental civil rights are unconstitutional, unfair, and certainly unnecessary.
Thank you, Simeon. Now, you have 1 minute for first rebuttal. Leah?
Okay, so it is very interesting that you bring up the discriminatory aspect of these laws. So the Honest Elections Project actually analyzed what percentage of voters of Black, Hispanic, and low-income situations look at this voter ID law as a burden. Of this, 64% of Black people disagree that it would be a burden. 77% of Hispanic people disagree that it would be a burden. And 76% of low-income people do not believe that it would be a burden. On top of that, you're arguing that every single vote counts, essentially by saying that we can't discriminate against anybody for not having a voter ID card. So even those 31 fraudulent votes should count. And in your argument. So in saying that, you're almost invalidating your own point. I also have a further question. Was there a further source behind the Washington Post article? Is there, which study are they pulling from? What are the standards behind that study? What was the polling group like? Thank you, that's all.
Thank you. So, rebuttal, 1 minute.
Unfortunately, for the sake of time, I can't go into all the details about the Washington Post study. It was reviewed from the American National Election Studies. I think there was one published in 2014 that they pulled from. Now, she said that discriminatory aspects of the voter process were not true. Or rather, she said that 64% of Black Americans disagree that it would be a burden. She also mentioned that 3 of 10 Americans believe Joe Biden won because of fraudulent voter ID. But all she's telling us is what Americans believe. So I'll tell you the numbers. The League of Women's Voting Society study showed in 2023 showed that 18% of elderly people over 65, 15% of low income, and 25% of African Americans lacked a proper photo ID for the state. This is comparable to just 2.3% of white Americans. We can't allow the discrimination of general groups just because of the basis of voter ID preventing voter fraud, which doesn't even happen.
Thank you. Second rebuttal, Leah.
Okay, so I would like to further question, how are you defining voter fraud? Which cases? Are we talking absentee ballot, or are we talking in-person ballots, or are we talking both? Because in this case, the photo ID laws would only really apply to in-person voting and at the polling places. And those people that do not have a photo ID are able to be provided a provisional ballot, in which case they can go back and cure it later with some form of identification. Oftentimes that can include a social security card or a birth certificate, or if they manage to get a photo ID in the meantime. Additionally, many states offer specifically voter IDs instead of a driver's license, non-driver's license, military ID, government ID, so on and so forth. So as far as, and I would also like to question your source. You said the League of Women Voters, correct? So the League of Women Voters, where are they polling, what was their polling pool like? Did they do any further studies? Has there been further verification of this? Are they pulling from a different study? Thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Leah. Simeon, final rebuttal.
I believe the League of Women Voters was also from the American National Election Studies. I'm not sure exactly where from. As it pertains to the question of fraudulence, according to the Brennan Center, an article in 2017, 0.00004% of all ballots cast were in-person impersonation. The rest are comparable numbers. You can check this later. At the end of the day, it's just not an issue that's happening. Voter fraud isn't occurring. And if we're to say that, okay, voter ID maybe is preventing it from occurring, then what are we to say of the 13 states that currently have no voter ID laws in place, with over 115 million Americans, and we still have such low voter fraud numbers? This isn't an issue we need to deal with. The issue we need to deal with is increasing voter turnout. Thank you.
Thank you both. So while the judges complete their scoring sheets, thank you both, we're going to call in the fourth set of debaters. All right, got it? There we go. Now, I just want to sort of say, oh, all right, excellent. Say parenthetically that this isn't just about education. There is a significant prize, a little, not significant, excellent prize money attached to it. I wouldn't say in today's tuition market our monies amount to significant. Can we rescue me with the SPC video, Kyle?
St. Petersburg College, home of the Titans, empowers our students and community to achieve success and economic mobility through academic excellence and engagement. Today, we educate over 46,000 students in more than 180 degree, transfer, and certificate programs. Our graduates fill jobs that stimulate the economy with an $855 million annual impact on Pinellas County.
I think I could recommend St. Petersburg College as a program because it's specifically tailored and designed from the very beginning to have the exact skills that are going to be expected of a student when they walk out the door with their degree.
As a leader in online education, St. Petersburg College offers more than 50 fully online degree programs, providing our students with flexible scheduling that fits into their busy lives. And with 11 learning sites across Pinellas County, SPC has a local presence in the communities where our students live, work, and play. The first community college in Florida to offer 4-year degrees, SPC provides more than a dozen bachelor's programs that help our graduates make more out of their careers.
The people that I have engaged with there are phenomenal. They're so open to really doing what's best for the student. We've hired about 35 students just in the past few years. Some of these students have already seen multiple promotions. St. Pete College is always looking for ways to make it as beneficial as possible for the students to be able to get a degree and to get the education that they need to be successful out in the workplace.
The college has also built unique partnerships with the University of South Florida and Florida A&M University that guarantee students admission to certain programs once they earn their associate degree at SPC. We graduate thousands of students each term, and our grads are ranked first for highest entry-level wages among Florida community college graduates, with an average annual graduation salary of $51,000. And more than 90% of our graduates find jobs in the field, continue their education, or serve in the military. SPC is removing barriers to student success by offering affordable education options at half the cost of state universities. In fact, each year, SPC awards nearly $6 million in scholarships and $125 million in financial aid to our students.
My internships that I had through St. Petersburg College provided invaluable experience. I believe I've had so much success because I had such wonderful professors at St. Petersburg College. Everything that they did and do for their students really help you long term.
Our talented faculty and staff are here for our students. 97% of faculty members hold advanced degrees, and we also offer free tutoring, career resources, personal advising, student clubs and organizations, and a community of care that is committed to supporting our students from application
to graduation and beyond.
Now, round 4. I'd like to introduce you to Chiara Crumby of HCC and Angelica Borza from SPC. Again, the issue is voter ID is necessary to protect voter integrity. Taking the agree side is Chiara Crumby. Taking the disagree side is Angelica Borza. Going first will be Chiara. 2 minutes to make your principal argument.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to let you know that voter ID is 100% necessary to protect voter integrity for 3 reasons: essentiality, elimination, and increase. Identifying yourself is a basic essential in life. When you go to a job, they give you an ID to show that you work there. When you go to the doctor's office, they ask you for your ID to affirm you are who you say you are. When you go to pick up your kids from school, they're gonna ask for your ID. So why wouldn't they ask for your ID at the polling office? Voting is a right given to American citizens. In giving your ID, you verify that you are the American citizen that you say you are, and you have the right to vote. Second, elimination. We can eliminate voter fraud if we verify that people are who they say they are. According to the National Conference of State Legislature, you can be sentenced to up to 5 years in jail for voter fraud. And since there's no recording at the polling office, if someone were to vote in your place, how can you prove that it wasn't you? This can be stopped if we just ask for voter identification at the beginning of voting. Reason number 3 is it increases trust in the system. A poll published by ABC News shows that only 20% of Americans have confidence in the system. And it's evident in voter turnout, which was only 66% of voting eligible people in America, according to the New York Times. Why does this matter? Well, Monica Crowley, former Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs, said it best: voting is as much an emotional act as it is an intellectual one. Increase voter integrity by requiring voter ID.
Thank you, Chiara. Angelica, you have 2 minutes to argue the opposite point of view.
Voter IDs are not necessary to preserve election integrity in America, and they actually discourage voter turnout. When you go to the polls, you will of course be prompted to show some sort of ID. Any sort of discrepancies between your last name and the address on file for you can prevent you from voting that day. Also, if your photo ID does not match what you look like that day, you can be denied at the polls as well, and that's all from USA.gov. Simply put, if you've recently gotten married, if you've recently moved, or if you've recently changed your appearance, like a haircut or growing a beard, this can all prevent you from voting at the polls. You also might be prompted to show some sort of proof of address. The central bank says that proofs of addresses can be utility bills, bank statements, or property tax returns. My question to you all is, how many of us can confidently say that we can locate one of these documents when prompted? Frankly, a small percentage of us, and this is a very strenuous task for the average American. Additionally, let's not forget the elderly in this debate today. According to Richard Sobel of the Houston Institute, it can cost upwards of $1,000 in fees when you consider transportation costs, legal fees, and the cost of getting voter IDs in of themselves. When you are elderly and you're on a fixed income, it's simply not plausible for you to spend this amount of money simply to vote. Additionally, we cannot play the voter fraud rate angle because voter fraud rate is so low in the United States. The Brennan Center actually estimates that you are more likely to get struck by lightning than you are to commit voter fraud. Voter fraud is such a small percentage of happening in the US, and for this reason, we cannot discourage the vast amount of people from going to the polls simply because it's too much of a hassle to get the correct documentation. That is why we need to ensure that more voters go to the polls by making it easier for them to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Chiara, first rebuttal.
Well, I don't know about anybody else, but we live in the lightning capital of the world, and if it lightnings, I'm still gonna run inside, even though it's not likely that I'll be struck. The same goes for voting fraud. It is not proven to be often, but who's to say that we're allocating the proper resources to even investigate that? Because everyone says it's not a big issue, but most people don't believe that. In our last election, it was 80 million people that didn't vote, and I'm sure a large majority of them didn't do it because they feel like their vote isn't going to count. If we start voter ID, we can start creating more information and data related to polling and voting to create more trust in why we should vote.
Angelica?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, voter turnout rate is incredibly low. And this is because it's very easy, as you mentioned, for people to get discouraged from voting. And part of the reason for this is because of how difficult it is for the average person to vote. When you consider all these forms of documentations that they have to have, not to mention that if you don't have these forms of documentation, you have to possibly take time off work in addition to paying to get these forms of processing for you when you go to office. And for this reason, it's incredibly difficult for the average American just to vote. And how can we say that we have a good system of democracy in our country when the average person might not go to the polls because they perceive voting as too much of a hassle for them? Thank you.
Thank you. Kiara, final rebuttal.
Well, we aren't asking for proof of address in this debate. We're asking for simply voter identification. So that can be a library card, that can be a driver's license, it can be a passport, it can be a school ID. We just need some official form to show that you are who you say you are. And if that's too much for you to vote, that's on you, because voter ID is a right and it's a duty as an American to go and vote. And it's not too hard because you have to present ID when you're driving. You have to present ID when you go on a school campus sometimes. You have to present ID at your job. So I think it's time to come together to increase turnout and increase integrity in our votes.
Thank you. Angelica, final rebuttal.
I think it's important to remember here that there's actually a large percentage of the population that does not have IDs, particularly the elderly, some poor people, as well as the homeless. These people do not have the ability, particularly with transportation, to even get to these locations to get the proper forms of identification. And if you're homeless, you don't have the address needed to list on your driver's license. These people deserve to vote, and it's not ultimately too bad for you because there's this significant portion of our population that is, as I said, elderly, poor, or homeless. Are these people just not going to get their voices heard in our democracy? As Americans, I think it's time that we step up and ensure that it's easier for more people to be able to exercise their rights, because that is the most American thing, in my opinion, is having freedoms and being able to freely exercise your rights without having anyone else infringe upon them. And that is why we need to get rid of the voter ID requirement.
Thank you both. As the judges complete their scoring sheets, let's go ahead and bring in our final set of competitors. Debate, which I think you might say is the art of convincing by a combination of discussion and argumentation and persuasion, has deep roots in Western culture. Throughout Western history, debate has thrived best in a democratic climate. But in order for reasoned debate to exist, there has to be an underlying agreement that if one says something, one is not going to be punished for engaging in the discussion. And I hope that this whole exercise sort of has trained our debaters that you can have discussions about tough topics and still maintain civility. Kyle, I think we have one last campus tour. This is the Polk campus. meet our final set of debaters. Welcome Addison, I knew I was going to get it wrong, Addison Fredenberg of Eastern and Natalie Gelman from MDC. Again, the issue is voter ID is necessary to protect voter integrity. Taking the agree side is Addison. Taking the disagree side is Natalie. Going first will be Addison. You have 2 minutes to make your principal argument.
Thank you. Liberty cannot be preserved without a general knowledge among the people, who have a right and a desire to know. This is a quote from John Adams from 1765, one of the founding fathers of this country. Americans deserve to know that no one will steal their vote, and voter integrity can be optimally attained by voter ID. In order to understand why voter ID is necessary to protect voter integrity, we must understand what we need to protect voter integrity from, and that is voter fraud. Voter fraud, according to the VOA News, includes casting illegitimate ballots, vote buying, and impersonating living and deceased voters. Voter ID can successfully uphold peace, minimize fraud, and respect one of America's most important rights. First of all, without voter ID laws, people's peace of mind is eradicated. It has been known that civil unrest has and will continue to happen if people perceive the votes as unfair. Secondly, is ID increases integrity and minimizes voter fraud. According to the AP News, the Supreme Court ruled that voter ID will be upheld because of the existence of voter fraud. And lastly, Americans have to use voter ID consistently in everyday life, such as to drive, to purchase alcohol and tobacco, to check into a hotel, and to get into many government buildings. We owe the men and women who fought for our country to protect our most beloved right. Thank you.
All right. Natalie, you have 2 minutes to speak in opposition.
According to the Brennan Center of Justice, a congresswoman in Indiana was actually blocked from voting because her congressional ID from the Congress, her congressional ID actually prohibited her from actually voting in Indiana because her ID did not have an expiration date. Voter integrity is ensuring that every eligible citizen is capable of practicing their right to vote. Even one person in our electoral process being prohibited from practicing their right to vote, we are not upholding our democracy. This is why I disagree with the topic that voter identification is necessary to protect voter integrity. Because 1, voter ID laws disenfranchise minorities, and 2, voter ID laws do not solve for fraud. First, voter ID laws disenfranchise minorities. According to a study conducted by University of Pennsylvania on July 1st, 2018, minority voters were 2.5 to 6 times more likely to actually be turned away in the state of Michigan because they could not obtain an ID. Then another study conducted by the University of California in San Diego, voter turnout in counties with a 75% non-white population, they found that a voter turnout decline happened of 1.5%. As you can see, voter identification is not preserving voter integrity because this means that a bunch of our population, thousands of people, are being disenfranchised and not having the right to vote. Second, voter ID is not necessary to protect voter integrity because voter identification will not solve for fraud. One of the most common ways people commit voter fraud are through duplicate votes. But according to the National Conference of State Legislators on October 25th, 2022, the US had very mobile population and voters rarely informed election officials that they moved. Therefore, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Addison, first rebuttal, 1 minute.
Rare it may be, voter fraud is still an immense issue, and just one vote could be the difference between winning candidates. The Supreme Court has also ruled that the use of voter ID does not disenfranchise against people in the U.S. government, as well as the fact that it's on the people to come and it is on the people who it's not so much on the people, but on the government that does not supply the proper utilities to provide voter ID. It is not on voter ID laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Natalie?
So my opponent says that there's not disenfranchisement in voters, and we're not seeing these racial minorities getting pushed out in their vote with voter ID laws. Well, according to the Washington Post, from 2000 to 2012, only 31 voter fraud cases out of 1 billion votes were actually considered, which means basically that voter fraud barely happens in our country. I'd also like to mention that voter ID laws actually does disenfranchise minorities, because as I've stated, we have seen that a lot, 2.5 to 6 times more likely than white voters, minority voters, to be pushed out of elections because they do not obtain a photo ID. Therefore, voter ID laws will not preserve voter integrity, because thousands of people are actually being disenfranchised by voter identification. Thank you.
Thank you. And final rebuttal, Addison?
In 2012, the Supreme Court ruled that that disenfranchisement did not take place because of voter ID laws. Any restrictions that voter ID would have would be based off the lack of resources that are able to obtain a voter ID, and that is on the fault of the government and not necessarily the voter ID laws that are being put in place. Moreover, we owe the people that have fought for this country to enable us the right to vote. We owe the sense of security to the peace of mind to the people who are voting every day in America. We owe that sense of security to our voters every day. Thank you.
Thank you. And final rebuttal, Natalie?
My opponent says that we owe our country and our people our security. But what I have to say about this is that we owe our people in our country the right to vote. As I've stated, I defined voter integrity as ensuring that every eligible citizen is capable of practicing their right to vote. Think about this, judges. Would you rather live in a world where we continue the trend of voter suppression, of voter ID laws suppressing certain minority groups in our country, where inequality continues to prevail in our country? Or would you rather live in a world, in a country, where democracy is upheld, where we can actually make a change, where voter ID laws will not disenfranchise our people in our poor communities, in our rural communities, in minority communities? We owe that to people. Because voter ID laws, first, like I said, do not work, and second, they disenfranchise voters, they cannot be necessary to protect voter integrity. Thank you.
Thank you both. If you would join your colleagues down there, that completes all 10 contestants, all 5 rounds. So, while the judges complete their scoring and our scorekeeper engages in the advanced math, I'm going to ask our competitors to step back up here. Just join me here on the stage. Don't be shy. Come into the light. Come into the light. All the way. All righty. So, everybody up. Can we kind of shift some of that so we have... All right. So I have a few questions for the crowd here. Actually, Sam, if you'd start this, and we'll go down the line here, and let me ask, if you would just tell me what your public speaking experience has been.
So far, I previously did the debate before this to make it to the finals, and not really much else. I've never done a lot of public speaking.
Well, it's different, isn't it? Yes. Props to you. Excellent.
Thank you.
All righty. Kiara, your public speaking experience?
I don't know. I talk a lot, but I haven't.
That's not public speaking.
I haven't done much on the mic, but yeah, the debate before this was the
All
first
right,
one.
congratulations. Excellent, thank you.
I have a decent amount of public speaking experiences, but this has been my first debate ever, so.
Oh, all right,
fun.
so your public speaking experiences, what kind were they?
I did informative prepared speaking and I did improv theater, and that's been about it.
Oh, okay, so competitive forensics or for fun forensics?
Competitive. I did it with the FFA and then just recently competed in my first college level forensics competition.
Excellent, all right, great.
I guess my first ever official public speaking started when I did debate last year. Prior to that, I just did like a lot of projects at my school locally, speaking in front of people, and that was pretty much it.
So how big were those crowds?
I mean, my high school's pretty small, about this much.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, good. All right, so what about your public speaking experience?
I've done public speaking for like years. Done different like speeches. I've done art grants. I've done impromptu speeches. I did SBC's debate last year. I made it to state finals. I did it on Zoom, so it's a little different than it is in person. I enjoy it in person way better, but. And then I did 2 rounds before this, and then I'm here today. So I love public speaking and debating. So
all right, excellent. All right.
I did 2 rounds of public speaking to get here. Other than that, I don't have much experience.
All right. Natalie?
Yes, I just started debate this year. I'm really loving it, but other than that, I don't have that much experience.
So competitive debate?
Yes, I just started.
And you never did debate in high school or mock trial or anything like that?
No.
Oh, this is pretty much amazing because honestly, if you started this in 8th grade, it would be a whole lot different than you decide to start it your freshman year in college. So congrats to you guys. What about your public speaking experience?
So I did debate in high school, but it was urban debating, which was a little different than this. But besides that, this is my first debate for this kind of style. I did BP before, but this is like my second tournament ever. So.
Okay, congratulations. Joshua?
Well, I've done competitive speech and debate for a couple years at my high school, and so it's just kind of, I'm continuing it with college, actually.
Excellent. And?
I took a public speaking class in high school. That was a disaster.
Many people say that about their speech class.
I spent a year doing British parliamentary debate, collegiate level, and a year doing collegiate mock trials debate as well.
All right, great.
I have 2 mics.
Well, pass one. Hang on to both of them, and let me ask my next question, which is how much research was involved in this, and where did you principally find your sources?
In today's debate? The American National Election Studies, as I sort of rambled about a little bit. A few other places, the Brennan Center for Justice was very helpful. Just generally I go to Google Scholar and then I just look for some studies.
Hey, that Google Scholar, that
works.
got the answer. Okay, so Joshua, how much time?
Well, I hope the judges aren't paying attention anymore, but I didn't really do that much research. I got it mainly from newspaper articles, but principally I focus on like logical arguments and like what just makes sense.
Oh, okay. So in terms of structuring or responding to a debate prompt, what's your first go-to? Where do you start?
So MDC Learning Resources and Library offer a lot of websites that we're allowed to use that are scholarly, and they pay monthly for us, so it's free. I use the Opposing Views, and I also use Google Scholar as well.
Okay, excellent. All right, so Natalie, what were your big sources?
So the sources I used, the Brennan,
Brennan Center,
Brennan Center. I used a lot of like peer-reviewed journals. I used, I think, a few from different universities that professors have conducted. Some research from like University of San Diego in California.
Okay. So did you have a different appreciation for social science research after you started working on this particular topic?
I would say so, yes, particularly in terms of looking at nonpartisan versus partisan sources. That was one thing that I tried to research more so on, just so that the person that I was debating against couldn't say, well, oh, that source might be biased because it has a political party or someone with a certain agenda that's running it.
Okay, excellent. All right, so where were your principal sources and why were you drawn to them?
It's always government or education because those are the most reliable sources. And so I always want to make sure if I present sources that they're reliable and up to date. I try to do 4 years max to make sure that they are reliable. And I also like to make sure they're not biased. Like this can be a very two-sided, debate, and I want to make sure it's biased and not putting my emotions into it, but really bringing just the facts to the table.
All right, so I just want to ask this question. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so Diamond, did you get assigned the side that you emotionally felt for, or did you get assigned the other side?
Controversial take. I don't think I really have much interest in voter IDs. I think that, I just don't understand. Like, because when you go to get your voter ID, you have to show different forms of identification to even get that. Why can't you just use those to vote rather than making an extra step, more so to say? But you need multiple documents to even get your driver's license. So I like that there's multiple forms of security. So I guess I would agree that we do need a voter ID. I just don't necessarily care whether we have it or not.
Excellent. So tell me about your emotional response to all of this.
So kind of similar to Diamond, I'm pretty neutral on this issue. I'm not even old enough to vote, so we talked about that earlier. But frankly, one of the things that was brought up a lot during the debates is that the frequency of verifiable voter fraud is pretty much nil, even in states that don't have voter ID laws. So it doesn't really matter either way, because if there were voter ID laws, most of us carry some form of ID that's acceptable, and there's a wide variety of them that are. So
okay,
I'm neutral on the issue.
Okay, so let me ask my shy speaker here. So did you, as you were reading about this, did you find a state or a theory that you agreed with more than another as you were doing the research in terms of their approach to voter ID?
Yeah, I actually got the side that I didn't want because voter ID laws, the trend basically shows that they do lead to voter suppression. If you look at Minnesota that doesn't have any voter ID laws, they have a over 73% turnout rate. But if you look at a state like Kentucky that does have very strict voter ID laws, their turnout is less than 66%, which is less than the national average. So,
and what is the national average?
66%.
66%. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Addison, tell me just this one last little, I promise I'm going to lay off you guys. I've got something that is not quite so revealing to ask you next. But what did you think about the topic, and how comfortable were you researching it?
So a lot of my research, I'm very passionate about getting pathos for a lot of my research. So I ask a lot of opinions, people who can vote, people who can't vote, people who lean on one side or another of the political spectrum. I like to get a lot of diversity. So I try to get, real world examples of real people's thoughts and opinions, as well as government articles, things like that. I think that the voter suppression is a issue, but I think that if the government makes voter ID more accessible to obtain, or maybe branches out, like making driver's license or maybe Social Security a valid form of voter ID, I think that would definitely be a step in the right direction.
I really like the idea that you started with audience analysis. That's really good. All right, I just have one last little question, really quick. You guys have engaged in a several months long endeavor here. What's the big takeaway for you from this particular endeavor? All right, let's just start with Addison. She's got the mic.
I would like to say the experience, but just the experience of, learning to speak publicly, being able to get to this point in my life. I never thought that I'd be here and, in St. Petersburg and with meeting a whole bunch of very important people, so I'm very proud to say that I got here.
Excellent. All right. Kiara, what's the takeaway?
I would say that mine's is that there's more to life than you think. I didn't know that a community college had all of this to offer. We get to stay at the hotel. We get to compete amongst our peers. We get to potentially win some money. Okay. I didn't know that all this was available to me. You know, it's a stigma about community colleges, but I'm seeing that there's so much more.
You betcha. Just keep looking. All right. So what's the takeaway?
My biggest takeaway throughout this debate, and especially the research process, was being able to look at one issue from multiple different perspectives and take things away from all of them, and then learning from my fellow debaters things that I did not know about the issue. So this has been a very informative event for me.
Diamond?
My biggest takeaway is to confirm everything. I'm kind of embarrassed by this, but up until this morning, I thought the debate topic was whether or not we should support affirmative action. And so I made my argument this morning. So I'm not necessarily the proudest of my performance this time, because I think I definitely did better other times. But if you think something, second guess yourself and then check it to make sure you're right, is basically what I learned.
All right. Good work.
I would say the biggest thing I've learned for doing SBC debate for 2 years now, it's definitely like when you go against somebody, don't make it personable, but it's just about the topic. Because everybody I've met is extremely sweet and is super nice and super friendly and just encouraging and supportive. And so just looking at it, it enhances our education and it's a friendly thing. It's not the person, it's just the topic. And it's not all about the money and the prizes, but it's really about who you meet along the way and just getting to learn from both sides.
Excellent.
My biggest takeaway is 2 minutes goes by really fast.
Doesn't it?
Especially when you're up here and there's time cards and your brain is trying to acknowledge like, oh, I have this much time left, but then I'm also talking while I'm thinking. So the mind is a very powerful thing. I think that's my takeaway.
Excellent. Natalie?
Yeah, so I think my biggest takeaway is to, research both sides of the spectrum. And I think right now in our country, we're, facing a lot of political polarization. And I feel like debate has really opened my eyes to looking at both sides of the aisle, both sides of the spectrum, and really kind of understanding the arguments on both sides and try to really think about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's an actual argument. I mean, there are things on both sides. Imagine that. Yeah. What's the takeaway?
Just the experience of speaking in front of an audience in general, because my experience has been with BP in a classroom with just the students that are participating.
Oh, so that's a vote. That's a vote of confidence for our big stage here.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent.
Well, my big takeaway is more focused on voting ID, because I can confidently say I never thought about it before now, but I'm not quite sure where I land on the argument, but I do know that there's more than that meets the eye, and I have a more comprehensive understanding of voter ID and how it relates to our everyday lives.
Excellent.
When doing public speaking, find a friendly face.
Oh, so true. All right. No, don't make the Vulcan mind meld with a potential critic, right? Right. You're looking for your soulmate out there in the audience. All right. Excellent. Okay, Sam. Are we ready to go here? Have we got results? But no pressure there. All right, Kim, you want to talk about the process of this debate here, what it took to put it together?
I just want to say really thank you to everyone.
No kidding.
So we were saying in our green room, our beautiful campus classroom, that this is no easy task for these students. They have been preparing for months. They have been meeting with exceptional leaders at their campuses. They went through their own round of debates at their respective campuses to get here. It's challenging to walk into a room, to see this many people, as you say, find a friendly face, get up there and get confident and get settled in your argument. And you all did an exceptional job. Can we have another round of applause
Yay!
for the students? And I want to take time to thank Luke. If you all turn around, there's a beautiful tech space up here. Mark has the best campus for tech. And we want to thank our tech team that does so much. Luke is up there doing all of this to support this beautiful space, and it's shown also from a hybrid perspective. So thank you so much for all the work you do. And thank you. I also want to take time to thank my exceptional team at the Institute. We have a small but mighty team. You see our wonderful lead with the camera who walks around us everywhere, making sure this is Matthew Lee. Yeah. The beautiful graphics that you see, this is his work. It's gorgeous, right? Yeah. It's amazing work. We have our statewide coordinator, Erin Bryce, who's here, who's done very well with helping us. You don't see Sharon in the back. She doesn't like to be in the front. She's in the back, but she's our administrative assistant, and she helps make sure all of these lovely people get their checks and everything is organized in a structured way. And finally, I want to say a special, important thank you to Sam Jenkins. He has been a great fit. He has worked tirelessly with our faculty, with students, with organizing, with structure. He has gained a whole new level of understanding of how to engage with faculty, which is a very special skill. And I want to thank him for all the work that he's done to get us here. And of course, I want to thank our board for supporting us, and of course for our leadership. So the Institute cannot do this work without student participation, and it's just lovely to see people in the room tonight celebrating this, since we've done this over Zoom now for 3 years. So nice to see you all in public.
Oh yeah.
I think we have some announcements to make. Our lovely judges are coming on stage.
All right.
Okay.
So join us. Are we ready for this announcement here? Okay, so first place in our competition, the award is $1,200 and a weeknight stay at the Cambria Hotel. The second place is a $500 award, and third place is a $250 award. Finishing third and receiving $250 is Diamond Jamal. Finishing second and receiving $500 is Kiara Crombie. Yeah. There we got, yeah, we're doing things in a big way at the Institute. Yes, all right. Let's, Matthew, do that. All righty. And finally, the winner of the 2023 Grand Debate and receiving a $1,200 award and a weeknight stay at the Cambria Hotel is Simeon Sanders. So congratulations, Simeon, and congratulations to your school as well. Yeah, go HCC. Obviously worked hard for the honor, and we salute you for your victory. So obviously there's just one winner, right? But you're all winners because you take away this huge experience. I really sincerely hope that the adrenaline rush from public speaking will be in your future. You all are really natural public speakers because you all connected with the audience. There isn't just one way to be a public speaker. There are lots of different effective ways, and all of you are starting on that journey to figure out what's the version of you're going to present to this audience. I can't remember who it was that said we should start with audience analysis, but that's what you want to think about. What room are you going to be speaking in? So with that, I hope our students in the audience tonight were inspired by your fellow students' performance here on stage, their courage to do this, their grace and ability to deal with endorphins and stray chemicals that panic and fight or flight induces as you do this kind of thing. And once again, I myself coach competitive teams, so I want to say thank you especially
to the hours and hours that our coaches devoted to this. I know it's blood, sweat, and tears, and I know there is no harder position than to have to sit quietly while your student is tackling that topic that you've talked about. So thank you all so much. And once again, to our judges, to our officials here, to Mr. Culligan, who didn't get called upon tonight, and that's exactly the thing we want to have. Thank you very much. Kim, it's all yours. All righty. My pleasure.
So thank you. This is how you can help us. We always say this. We're just trying to spread the good news of who Congressman Young was and what he stood for. This is 10 years since he's been gone. He was an incredible statesman, a person who cared. And if you want to support the Institute, we just ask that you follow us on social media, learn more about what we do, encourage programs, and let us know how we can better help the community and the Florida college system. Thank you so much for your time. Congratulations to all the winners. Thank you, judges, for your time tonight. Good night.